Hi, I'm Jennifer, and this is Comics Will Break Your Heart. In my first video recording for this new channel that I created, it would be Free Comic Book Day, which is typically on the first Saturday in May every single year. As we know, COVID-19 has paused and disrupted a lot of things in the comic book industry, a community that is very near and dear to my heart. In a happen chance reading of Planetary by Warren Ellis, which, thank you, Dan, I happened to find a very pertinent letter. Alan Moore, despite his disdain for the comic book industry, penned a foreword to this wonderful story. And as if Alan Moore was writing through time, he wrote this letter that has a lot of very pertinent information for right now. Words of hope found me in this, and even though this introduction was written over 2 decades ago, it seems as if nothing has changed, but everything has changed. And here are some words from Alan Moore. Writing this in the last guttering stub of the 20th century, aware of you reading it in the fresh-lit flame of the 21st, it's difficult not to be struck by the Janus-like view that we have of the landscape from here, stretching a long way behind us and further in front. Not only the much broader landscape of human and global affairs, but also the landscape of that smaller world that we know as the comic book field. While the boom and bust sweep of the last decade will almost certainly not prove the end for the comic strip medium, it nevertheless remains difficult not to emerge with a sense that while comics may not have collapsed into rubble forever, still something has changed. Something's gone. Not a market, a format, a style, or a thing of the hard and material world of brute commerce, but something more abstract and rarefied. Some phantom essence. The thing that has changed may not be in the comics themselves, but instead their audience. Could it be rather that people have changed in the accelerated and furious rush of these last 100 years, while the comics that they read have changed more slowly, or in many cases not at all? One of the field's defining axioms in this century has been that people want not change, but the illusion of the same. This is a fallacy based on a purely short-term observation. While it may be true that people don't want change, it's also true that what we want and what we get are very different things. The 20th century gave us nothing else but constant and tumultuous change, and did not think to ask us if we wanted it or not. We both knew change and were ourselves changed in the torrent of events. The underlying human taste and audience demands on which we built the comics field have altered in the flux of things, within the readership, if not within the books themselves. The way that people think and see things has moved on. The massive scaffolding of values where the comics field was raised seems now deserted, seems redundant. Comic book creators moving through this wasteland between centuries are, it would seem, subject to twin conflicting impulses. On the one hand is the reckless New Year's resolution urge to plunge headlong into the future, as of course we must, while on the other hand we have the weighty knowledge of the glittering rubble that we leave behind us at our backs. With so much of great worth there in the long backyard of comics history, we are obliged to ask ourselves if there might not be yet buried treasures it seems fit for salvage. Many of us seem to have the feeling, only mistily defined, that it is some element in comics past that will provide the key with which we can unlock the medium's future. As if in order to move forward, we must also somehow simultaneously move back, however paradoxical that may appear, which brings us, by a somewhat drawn-out route, to Planetary. Alan Moore goes on to talk about Planetary, which is a fantastic story written by Warren Ellis, and I highly recommend it. And as I said before, thank you, Dan, for recommending it to me. So thank you for joining me. Happy Free Comic Book Day, and I hope to see you on the other side of New Comic Book Day.